Hey everyone, welcome to the Searchcast, the ultimate podcast for marketers who want to have authentic conversations about the world of digital marketing. My name is Shane Hampson, and with me today is Taylor Ross, a technical SEO manager at Aceable. Taylor, you want to say hello?
Hello, everybody.
So today, Taylor and I are going to talk about some really fascinating topics, things around career paths, agency versus in-house jobs, some SEO trends, and just some really cool things that we're proud of. I'm proud of Taylor personally for speaking at having a part at MozCon this year in 2023. So we'll kind of recap a little bit of that. Taylor, can you tell that everybody kind of like who you are, how long you've been in the game, and where you're at now?
Yeah, so I'm Taylor Ross, and I started in digital marketing in 2012. So I'm an old dog. Was around Panda and Penguin and all that good stuff. And as Shane said, I've trickled through agency work, in-house work, and now I am the technical SEO manager at Aceable, which is headquartered in Austin, Texas.
Awesome. And what is Aceable?
Yeah, Aceable is online learning. We do driver's ed, defensive driving, and then we also have a real estate vertical. So if you want to get your real estate license, we provide those pre-licensing courses, continuing education courses, and everything like that. So I make sure that our website is working well, speed is up to date, and just everything is looking good.
Awesome. So technical SEO manager, does that mean like there's a greater team? You don't do any content? What does that mean?
Yep. So that means I work very closely with the content manager. This is actually my first role where content and technical have been separated. And so it was kind of a learning curve to do that. But basically, what I do is I am the back end. Anything that deals with site speed, links, broken links, I man a Jira board. That if anyone finds anything on the website, they'll send it over to me. And then also, if anybody wants something to go live on that site, it has to cross my desk. As far as content creation and strategy is concerned, we have an entire content team that does that. And so, yeah.
How has that transition been for you, Taylor? Because I know you personally. We worked together for a couple of years, and Taylor's awesome, by the way, just to work with day to day. Makes the culture super fun and engaging, and no one has a bad day when they're around Coach Taylor, T. Ross the boss, as I call her. But I know you're a good writer yourself. You have a lot of content experience. So how has that been? You breaking the that technical from the content out? Is it like one of those things where it's frustrating because you don't have any say, or are you just part of a great team and it's not really an issue? Like how does that
Oh
work?
man, the team at Aceable is top notch. And I'll say working anywhere, building rapport in those relationships is super important. And so it actually hasn't been a big thorn or a big headache. First of all, mainly because if there is a broken link or terrible anchor text, it says click here or whatever. Since I do have some writing background, if it is very minimal, I'll just cut out the middleman and write it. But because I have that built relationship, the content manager trusts me with that type of task. So that's been very helpful. But if it is a larger ask or if I have to add in anything that's a whole page of content, then it is good to have a content manager do that. In regards to strategy, she and I have weekly one-on-ones, and I talk about performance. We look at KPIs together, and I make sure that she's not too zoned in, and we're looking at the entire industry. What are consumers searching for, and not just what keyword dropped that day on SEMrush. And so she takes over most of the strategy, but we play good cop, bad cop really well together.
That's good. It's hard for me to imagine you being the bad cop because you're just like so positive all the time. But I'd love to see that in person. That's hilarious.
We'll say optimistic and pessimistic cop.
There we go. I love it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting too. So you're the technical SEO, meaning kind of like, I think in your words, off camera, you said you're like the firewall. Basically, everything has to go through you. That's another transition, right? Because you came from the agency world where you wanted everything on the site like right away. Now that you've had experience in both, is it like kind of is there any sort of karma playing into that role, or?
Uh, no, not really. And I actually love having kind of the say so of, hey, this is the recommended best practice. And then I can actually go and do it because one of the biggest headaches in the agency world is You were there with me, Shane. We were doing all these great reports, and we say, hey, we recommend these changes, and then you give it to your client, and then they say, okay, we'll send it to so and so. And then 3 months later, when it's time to do another report readout and they haven't implemented anything, that can be super frustrating. So it's very good that I can go in, make the changes, and hit publish.
Yeah, I think that's the number one thing that it just kind of stalls any SEO is just implementation. So the fact that you get to
Yeah.
own that part of this, that's super cool.
Yeah.
I love that. So you've been in here for about 10, almost 11 years, probably, in the SEO world. Panda and Penguin, I think you kind of mentioned. It's
Yeah.
kind of crazy how those just kind of fell off, right? Now they're just kind of baked into the algorithm and no one talks about
Yeah.
them, even though, I came in a little bit before that. And like you, it's kind of like that was the whole world. Panda, Penguin,
Yeah.
spam content, spam links. The world is
Well, I mean,
ending.
that's EAT now, it is baked in now because it's a best practice. Before all the keyword stuffing and all of that was best practice because that's what got you to the top. And then Panda and Penguin happened. But, no one talks about it because that's like saying, hey, brush your teeth this morning. Like, you don't need to say it, you just do it.
It's just everyday practice. So going back, talking about your career path, your career journey, you're crushing the game right now. I absolutely love to see it. Even if it's from afar, we don't work together anymore, which is sad, but I'm super happy for you. But if you go back in time, a decade ago, what would you tell young Taylor? Like, what are some of the
Yeah.
lessons learned? How could you have done anything differently to get to where you are faster? Or was it like a pretty steady progression that you kind of think you needed those building blocks along the way?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, I'm the baby of the family, so I've always really suffered with imposter syndrome. And so if I could go back a decade, I would say, hey, bet on yourself and don't let anyone kind of kick you out of the room or feel like you are kicked off the table when no one has kicked you out of the table. You did it yourself. I think that's the biggest thing. It's like where I was like, I know I'm smart enough. I know I can do this, but I was afraid to speak up because I was new. And so when I really, grew up and was like, no, I know my stuff and I'm going to show people that I know my stuff and kind of really got brave, that's when my career really took off. So I would tell myself earlier, hey, just be brave. And if you mess up, like if you're going to fail, fail big
Yeah.
because people respect that and then, take accountability for it and learn from it. And I think that's what I would tell myself.
I think that's super sound advice. I think it's so easy, especially growing up in the agency world, where I think titles come into way more of a factor than they ever should. Really, it's like, oh well, that's the director's job, that's the manager's job. But when you look at a team, I've been in situations where I was a specialist or a senior specialist, and I was just as capable, if not more, than the leadership team,
Yes,
right? And
absolutely.
so yeah, it's kind of like the self belief, right? But
Yeah,
then it's also
yep.
kind of knowing your worth too, right? I think that's something that I think that's an area where the world has changed. Where my parents' generation, it's like you have one job for 20 years and you don't ever leave no matter what.
Yeah.
Where maybe it's just digital marketing, but people, it's not uncommon for them to stay 1 year and then leave, 2 years and leave, 3 years. If you're like a 5 year plus person in the digital marketing world, you are like a stalwart. You are immovable.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
good for
And
you.
something you just said with like, the directors and the senior directors in the room. And so you kind of have to be like, one of the great things about knowing your worth and knowing that you know your craft is you show them that you do. And the higher up you get in the job title, the less of a worker bee you become. So my manager, who's the senior director of marketing, always says, hey, you know more about this than I do now. Like, what do you think? She comes to me for advice and really respects my brain and my insights because I've shown her that I can do it instead of not being brave and kind of cowering away and being like, that's above my pay grade. Like, no, I'm about to make it my pay grade and show you that I can do it. And so, yeah,
I think it says a lot, right? We've talked offline, quite a bit, just in day-to-day life. And I think Aceable is so cool, right? They've not only career path wise, helping you grow into getting your input from your senior director, right? Like that's super important in terms of a company that actually not only says they believe in SEO, but they put kind of their money where their mouth is and
yeah,
they take actions on it. I think that's really cool. But for those of you who don't know, Taylor is also a badass CrossFit coach, and I think Aceable actually they kind of helped, so they kind of support your career there as well. Is that
Oh
correct?
my gosh, absolutely. So if you've ever seen CrossFit on TV, it's called the games. And before you make it to the games, you have to go through a few like checkpoints and cutoffs. And if you score top 10% in your region, which is you're better than 90% of everybody in the country, you get to move on. And I somehow, some way did that. And I just said it in passing to the CEO one day or to my manager. And the CEO also likes to work out. And they sent me a gift card and, we're really supportive. And they're like, whatever you need, do you need to go to the gym? Do you need to go train? Of course, making sure I get my work done. But like the work life balance is unmatched. Like having a company that supports your personal endeavors as well as your professional growth is really hard to find. So,
Yeah, and I think that just comes from leadership too, right? Like,
yeah.
really good leaders kind of identify talent. They're like, we need to keep this person happy and productive, and
Yeah.
knowing you, when your morale's up, you're like as productive as anybody that I've ever met, and you produce it at a high level, as high level as anybody I've ever met. So, I think that's super great. So, hats off to Aceable, hats off to your leadership team. That's incredible. You mentioned work-life balance. You've worked agency for almost a decade. Now you're in-house at Aceable, which is awesome. What are some pros that like, what's the kind of the right person for an agency versus an in-house person?
Yeah.
Start with agency.
So, yeah, agency, I would say the right person. At an agency, the culture is amazing. Like it's kind of like a dorm, if you will, because everyone is working so hard. And so you really have to be a go-getter, a self-starter, and you can't really dwell on things too long. Like analysis paralysis is going to be your worst enemy at an agency because you have so many clients and you literally have to get through each one of them every single month. And sometimes you're required to speak to each one of them every single month. And so a person who will sit there and just kind of like stir around an idea for a full week is not going to cut it in the agency. You really have to be a quick thinker on your feet, very solution oriented, and then be able to deal with a lot of personality types because clients, there are some who think they know every single thing about digital marketing. And then you have some that are like, what does SEO even stand for? Like, I know I need it, but I don't know what it is. And so you kind of have to be a chameleon in order to make it in the agency world.
What about that? What about in-house?
In-house is all right. So I've had two in-house experiences that are night and day. One worked and one didn't work. The one that didn't work, it was, again, it was the exact opposite of what I just described. Every single thing had 8 million checkpoints. It was very hard to get anything implemented. Any kind of out of the box thinking was just cut off at the knees. And you kind of had to abide by all of the rules, and usually in-house is a smaller company. And so it's their baby, right? It's usually a private company. And so they're very hard pressed to take big swings or big risks. If you do like to kind of tarry around big ideas and you're like, I can't give this to anyone or show anyone until it is absolutely buttoned up, that slower in-house field might kind of be more your speed. Where I'm at right now, it's in-house work with like agency culture, which I think goes perfectly with me. So we have a great team, we have great morale, we cross communicate, and I do cross team collaborations very well. But I have to move quite quickly because, as I described earlier, we have a couple of different verticals, and I have 5 domains that I take care of. So it's one business, 5 domains. And so, yes, I make a strategy and implement action items, but then I have to do pulse checks and I get to see things from start to finish. And so if that's super important to you, if you're like, listen, I started this strategy and I really want to see where it goes, pass or fail, in-house is going to be more your speed.
Yeah, I think you summarized it really well, right? I think, looking back on my career, I don't know if I could have gone in-house right away, just because, today's world, I sound like the old person, stay off my lawn, but I guess I am that person if I'm being honest with myself. Uh, but
You're old. Grandpa
but back
shame.
in the day, us old heads talking, there wasn't a lot of any way to learn SEO other than agencies, right? Like there
Yeah.
was Bruce Clay's book, Search Engine Optimization for Dummies. Moz was like still in kind of in its infancy. It was
Yep.
probably the best, but
Yeah.
it didn't have like all of the free resources it did today. YouTube wasn't chock full of all the top influencers giving away this free knowledge. So I think
Right.
agency, they played such a big part in my development, just learning SEO from people that have done it before, and even just listening, right? Just observing.
Yeah,
Just oh
bigger
wow, right?
teams and agencies. Yeah,
Yeah.
usually in-house, you're either like the one lone wolf contributor that you're the only one who knows SEO, or you have like a smaller team. In the
hmm
agency, you've got a team of, let's say, 20 or 30, and so you can ask literally any question you want.
Yeah, and I don't think, when I first started, I don't even think there was many in-house SEO jobs out there.
Right. Yeah.
And if there
No.
was,
Yeah.
it was like a scaled down version of what you do. There was just a person, and they did SEO and email and web, and they're just a general marketer, right? And
Yep.
SEO just fell into onto their
Yes.
bucket, whether they knew what it was or not.
Exactly.
Taylor, AI is such a big part of, 2023. ChatGPT came really relevant in 2022, late 2022. What are some ways that you guys are using AI, or are you guys kind of staying away from it, or what are some
Oh
things that?
gosh, no. Definitely don't want to stay away from it. I know that it was a very taboo topic in the beginning, but it definitely speeds up your work. I actually just used it last week. I'm cleaning up some of our structured data. As you know, FAQs and how to's are kind of like no more, right, with Google structured data. And then going in to make sure that I have properly set up my organization structured data throughout. But I'm going to get really geeky for 30 seconds. When you set up organization structured data, you assign an ID to the homepage. So now you can just have ID on all your internal pages, and that will bring over all of the information that you put in on your homepage. And I was like, great. And so I went in and I said, hi, ChatGPT, can you please write structured data using organization type for this domain? And they said, sure, here it is. And I said, great. Now, write structured data for this course, but I also want to use the organization ID type as well. And so what it did was it was able to give me, it gave me product, and then it nested in course, and then it also nested in that organization ID. And what would have took me, let's say, 30 minutes to code on my own, was done in 5 seconds. And I
And then the
absolutely
cool
loved
thing
it.
is you can tell your boss, like, I spent the last 3 weeks doing this, so.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the invention of those TI calculators. You remember those in school? And yeah,
I
my
wasn't
mom
very
would
good at
literally.
school, but
Oh,
no.
I was
So
I was
yeah.
great at school, but my mom was like, "No one's gonna know what 3 times 2 is anymore because they don't do math on paper, right? Everyone uses a calculator." And I kind of feel like that's kind of the same with Chat GPT. Yes, I can code. Yes, I can do it, and I'm really glad that I have that craft. But I just did 5 seconds what would have taken me 30 minutes. So now I can go in and start that implementation faster and, go through any pulse checks or bug checks that I need. And so I really enjoy using it.
I was the kid in school that I was always looking for the shortcut. I didn't want to show my work. I knew the answer was right, but I don't need to show you how I
Oh,
got there.
see, I
I
was the
just
opposite
I
kid.
can do it in my head. And I remember my teachers being like, "You're not gonna have a calculator forever." And then it's like, "Hello."
Yes, I will. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And Google. So if you need that percentage formula, which if you want to work in this industry, you better memorize that percentage formula.
See, I think that's the difference, right? Like you are a technical SEO, and you were the person that loved showing your work and how you got there, and that fits you, right? I'm more of
Yes.
a strategist at this point in my career, and I just want to I just want to talk about the strategy and just make it
Yeah.
happen. I don't need to show
Yep.
you every foundational piece along the way. Let me just show you the end result, 'cause that's what really matters the most, right? Like,
No, the journey, the
and I
journey.
think that's why
Magic
you
is
and
in
I
the
worked.
journey.
I think that's why you and I worked well together, right? Because it's like
Yep.
it's a yin and yang. It
Yeah.
counterbalances each other. So
Yep.
it's awesome.
Exactly.
The other thing I want to talk about was kind of continuing on down the line of the work-life balance. You actually got to do something really cool this year at MozCon in 2023.
I
So
did.
you actually did is called Birds of the Feather, right? And your topic was about work-life balance. Is I remembering that correctly?
Yes. Yeah, so I attended MozCon 2023 in Seattle and was invited to lead what we call like birds of a feather. They're like tables that we do during lunch, and we lead different topics. And I knew everybody was going to be talking about SEO, but what a lot of people don't talk about is work-life balance, which is very important, especially if you work in an agency, which is where most people start. And so, yeah, I was able to speak to quite a few young people, which was very I didn't know that people were really eager to voice what was going on and really get some insight from older people, or even talk about real life things that are going on. Like, well, how do I manage this versus this? Or someone's telling me to do this, but I only have time to do this. And just listening to people in all of these situations that I've been in personally, it was very rewarding to just be able to step back and be like, I see you and I've been there, and let me tell you what's important, what's not important, and how you make it through this. And so that was very, very helpful for me.
Yeah, that's super cool, right? I think that was like the first time I ever applied for anything like that, and the fact that they chose you and you got to do that, that was
Yeah.
incredible. And shout
Yeah.
out to MozCon this year, it was incredible,
Yeah.
incredible.
It was awesome.
I think you
Met
kind of mentioned
amazing
one of
people.
Chris Long's talking points already, the paralysis by analysis. If you're always playing defense, you
Yep.
can't play offense, and offense is what wins championships. So
That's
shout out
right.
to you too, Chris. Yeah. Cool. You manage five domains. It's like one brand or one company, but five domains. What are some of the tools that you leverage on a day-to-day basis? What are some of your favorites to make that possible?
Yeah. So as a technical SEO, my hands down go to, oh my gosh, is Screaming Frog, of course. And every single time they update a version, which is every other week, something gets better. And I use that tool quite a lot because people will ask me for very intricate reports, and that's the fastest way I can pull them. I also use SEMrush. SEMrush is excellent just to see performance moves, what my pages are doing, what they're showing for keyword moves up and down. Um, Hrefs, of course, any techie is going to use that. You can see overarching anything technical about your domain back there. And then you can also look into competitors as well. And then another thing that I've actually started, I used to use it a lot. I put it down and then I started using it a bit more because I just noticed trends. Was Google Trends. I stopped using it for a while, but I was like, there's something going on here with my keyword ranking, and I promise it's not me. And Google Trends confirmed it. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such an important piece, right? Like, how do you measure KPIs accurately after pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic? It's so volatile. The economy's changed so much, with inflation being up, and it's a wild time. So I think Google Trends is absolutely a great way to do it. It's just
Yep.
so hard, There's so many, almost every industry's seasonal, like almost every business, right? So when you talk
Yes.
about seasonality, it's like year-over-year traffic is always a good benchmark, but it's just so tricky in the last 4 years, right? It's
Yeah.
just so
Or it's
tricky
like if
measuring.
you can't look at all your competitors, you're like, well, is everyone going down? I
Hmm.
mean, I can put in SEMrush my competitors and kind of see what's happening. But if I just want like a nationwide, like, what are people looking for? Is anyone looking for this? And then my trend line's going, it's like, oh, that wave is decreasing. Oh, okay. Maybe we need to chase another keyword, like another. So that's a really good way to kind of keep an open mind.
Absolutely, and just even the way people search, right? Like it's different.
Yes.
Where before it used to be keyword plus geo, right?
Yes.
Now with Bard and ChatGPT, people are having real conversations with the search engines.
Yes.
And unfortunately for you and me and everyone else, Google hasn't shared what those analytics look like. So we don't even know how much is getting taken away from our side, or is it not being taken away? We don't really know. I know
Yeah.
Bing kind of started to share, but you can't really break it out between SGE and traditional search. So it's kind of rolled up into one. It's tricky.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
a
a
tough
slower
time.
rollout. Yeah. No,
That's
definitely.
I think that's my prediction for 2024. I think Google's finally going to give us some insights, and they'll start with paid search first, right? In terms of how chat analytics are working in terms of queries and CTR and stuff like that. But they got to figure it out, and we have to figure because they need to share it with us. So we know what is what, and we're all just guessing, and it is a frustrating
Yeah.
part of SEO. But I guess that's why
Yeah.
we have jobs, right? Like,
Yeah. And I mean, the same thing happened when feature snippets rolled out, right? Everyone's click through rate tanked because you were getting all your answers right there on the SERP. And we were like, well, what's happening? My click through rate is bad. So now we had to take click through rate with a grain of salt. Like, but did they get what they were looking for? Did you achieve that position zero? If yes, and your click through rate went down, then that's not necessarily a negative factor, right? And so, and SEMrush, we now have feature snippet. data within SEMrush. You can see what you show for and whatnot. So maybe, like you said, down the line, we'll start to see, Chat GPT stuff or Bard things coming through. Sorry, not Chat GPT. Bard things coming through, like, oh, you showed for this many queries or
Yep.
such and such. And that would be really helpful.
Yeah, 2024 is going to be a really, really important year for just AI in general. I think if Google doesn't get it figured out in 2024, I don't know if it takes off because we've kind of been like right on the edge for so many, well, it feels like for a year. It has been a year at this point,
Yep.
and we're really no closer to being able to actually report on it than we were a year ago, and that's frustrating. I think that people, even ChatGPT, is starting to die out a little bit in terms of overall. In the SEO world, it's still on the rise. For the general mass populace, when you look at Google Trends, it's flattened out. But I don't think that the general public cares about reporting as much. But I think it's just kind of like I don't know if people trust some of the answers that are
That's what I was
being
gonna say. It's
produced.
it's it's new, and so like if you look for something and what I mean, it's a robot, right? And robots have to learn, and so as it's new, it's gonna give you some incorrect information depending on where it's pulling from. And if you mess up once, like you've lost that person, they're not gonna trust you. And what they're gonna do is scroll down to the regular organic search, click on a page, and be like, they're gonna fact check Google with Google. And I feel like that's what's gonna happen is people like to see new things, like that shiny new thing, but having that sense of familiarity is and consistency is what people really crave. And so if they're not familiar with this, or if it's kind of giving them 50-50 accuracy, they're not going to trust it. And so yeah, Google definitely has to get that going better.
Yeah, I think the way you describe using ChatGPT for schema is a perfect way of doing it because it's very black and white. There's not too much dynamic stuff about it. Where it gets tricky is like with LLM models is like I think John Mueller said it not that long ago. He's kind of saying how helpful is AI content if it's just regurgitating other people's content? Yeah, I
Exactly.
mean, at its root, that does make a lot of sense, right? Like,
Yeah, but it,
so
it
how do
can
you
give you a
incorporate?
template. You just have to, will it speed you up? Yes, but can you be lazy with it? No, right? Like, hey, ChatGPT, do my work. All right, here you go. Well, now you have to go in and QA that work and
Hmm.
make sure that the data points are actually accurate.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very excited for 2024. I know it's only what 2 days away at this point, 3 days away. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what it has in store for us. 2023 has been a very volatile year in terms of algorithm rankings. Any of them stand out to you in particular?
You mean except for the fact that we've had an algorithm update every month since August?
At least one, yeah.
At least one, two in some months. I think the biggest one that stood out, or at least that's kind of affected me and my business, is the reviews update. Right? You had the spam reviews, and then you just had overarching reviews. Those two that happened. Yes, helpful content was huge, but I think reviews really brought it home because what it did is a lot of us hide behind our big pages, right? The ones that are right there on level 2, and those are the ones that are really good. You make sure that they're up to date and they look great. Well, this reviews update and then even the hidden gems update, what it's doing is bringing out those more internal pages. And so I said they got promoted, but our internal pages weren't ready for the promotion, right? They lack the quality that they need to rank well. And then also that first person review data, right? A lot of people write reviews on their products on their own. So now we're having to go in and re-strategize and come up with like video strategy and hey, send us video reviews so that we can put that up and transcribe it and things like that. That stuff that Google is looking for that used to play a part, but now it's such a big role that we just weren't prepared for it. And so I think that was the biggest thing in my book. Our transaction pages, just fine, but those don't weigh as much anymore. So,
Yeah, when it comes to eat building, right? Google's looking at everything, right? So yeah, like, to your point, it's not just a game of smoke and mirrors, right? You need the actual context behind what makes you great, what makes you the
yeah.
authority in that area. So
But someone else has to say what makes you great. You can't tell people what
yeah,
makes you great. Your
exactly.
consumer has to tell people what makes you great.
Yeah, I think, and that's exactly what that extra E in EEAT went for experience, right? Google
Yes.
knows that LLM models can't replicate experience, right?
Right.
That's the only thing that makes things authentic in terms of content.
Exactly.
Cool, Taylor. Well, this has been 30 minutes. I'm trying to keep these nice and sweet. Where can people find
Sweet.
you on social media?
Yep. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Taylor Ross. Instagram, T Ross underscore the boss, which is far more entertaining than my LinkedIn. But my LinkedIn is pretty cool as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Taylor. Hope you have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend. Talk to you soon.
Thanks. All right. Bye.